I'm your host, Fahad Faruqui, and you're watching The Coffee Table. In life, we're constantly yelling at others for the chaos around us and within us. In nearly every facet of life, we have two choices: to act ethically or to do whatever that strikes our fancy. In pursuit of happiness, we often choose the easier way out. But does that truly make us happy? To answer this rather tricky ethical dilemma, we have with us these two fantastic souls, Naila, who is the author of the book The Door of Peace, and Omair Rana, who is a brilliant actor and an even better human being, and more so, my friend. Thank you for being with us. Is it that we are born with a sense of what's right and what's wrong, and we learn its application over a period of time?
Yes, I would say that it is true, because that is what distinguishes man from the rest of creation. And when I say man, I mean human creation.
But there are people who say that it's the survival of the fittest, and we have to do what we have to do. So where does the right and wrong comes into play, in your opinion?
I think the challenge really comes, and when you refer to survival of the fittest, it's a very worldly perspective. And the challenge of values and ethics comes when they clash with needs, or whatever we define as needs.
True.
Otherwise, they can coincide very happily. So the school of thought that I belong to, we generally believe that both needs and values are very important, but you put them both in the put them both in the front seat, but put the steering on the driving seat, put the values there. So that if there is a clash, that the values will be able to put you on the right track. What does happen is, yes, survival of the fittest takes you to the short run, but in the long run, you will need those values, and that's what you'll be identifying with.
Where do those values come from? I mean, this is a question I'm posing to both of you. Why don't you go ahead first? Where do these values come from?
I think from a concept of an ideal that you follow in life. I mean, you have to have an ideal in life, otherwise, what is the difference between you and any lower creation out there?
But what we have seen is the ideal is actually what we see on Facebook with people who are trending on Instagram. I mean, growing up, who were our ideals? There was the sports star, the singer, so on and so forth.
I can understand what you're saying. I think fundamentally carrying on from what the first question was answered, but Ms. Naila was saying that you've got a, I personally also believe there's a personal moral compass that we all do carry, unless of course those...
Is that innate?
Yes, I personally believe so. Unless, of course, and I'm not talking about the exceptional cases if you've become a psychopath or someone whose ailment has actually derailed it or you're numb to it. But in the general sense of it, yes, we do have moral compass. However, when it comes to social inhabitants of values, the challenges that do come, and again, in the context of the second question you asked was, the challenges that do come is, first of all, to be able to see our values in my benefit. But there's a question that lies behind that we usually forget. What are values? How do you define them? And over generations, we have seen when expedience has taken up, has kicked in, or where consumerism, for example, has picked up, that I no longer want a mobile phone, I need the latest mobile phone. So when I've changed my economic definition...
You're being very subtle. It's, I need the latest mobile phone.
Of course. You know,
and there is no way around it.
There's no way around it. So we've actually turned the economic definition upside down, which we learned from the Economics 101. There's a difference between wants and needs. Now we are smudging. So consumerism does that. It survives on the fact that it survives on the ill of humanity, and the two which drive us away from values and ethics, if I may pitch them. One of them is fear, and the other is greed. And that's what consumerism thrives over.
And the third is acceptance?
No, I think acceptance comes primarily out of either one of them. I mean, I'm accepting to be need-driven and compromise on my value, either because of my fear or because of my greed.
And greed really comes from a materially dominant culture, right? When our consciousness becomes dominated by materialism, then we
That's exactly what
are driven by greed, right?
But then that's become the norm. We've forgotten that there is a distinction between the need and want, and we need everything. It's like there is a there is a new mobile phone, as Omair
I'll
said.
tell you one more need, the new lawn launch that's going to happen,
Of
right?
course.
So all the ladies are going to be fighting each other because I need that, carrying the bucket with them.
They'll be fighting is an understatement, I think. I mean, you see some of them. It's like none of us. You go in a classroom and you ask students a question: how many of you have clothes that you've never worn? Believe you me, every hand goes up, including mine. And that's a reality check.
Hyper-consumerism.
I mean, it's not a far departure from myself, so I can't say it's you that's a problem or your generation is a problem. It's me, myself as well. So we're all consumed in it.
Because that's the prevalent culture.
So how do we get out of it? The big thing is, have we been corrupted over a period of time? So we've forgotten our true self.
I personally, when we say we particularly, I'm not taking, well, there's a global we.
Well, the
and
human we.
The human we, the global we, and there's also our micro-society in the world, so to speak. It's not micro anymore, it's huge, right? Pakistan, as a culture that we have, yes, I think
Which
there is.
prevails in the subcontinent
Of course
and
it
in the
does.
Middle East.
Of course it does. Now, for example, and you see when it comes to it, this is where when with the collapse of the Soviet Union, the attempted embodiment of socialism has collapsed. Capitalism has dominated, it's come over. And then if you go to the mecca of capitalism, you go to the United States of America, one of the largest businesses is storage. And I've always wondered, they don't live in houses like England.
No?
Why do they need storage? Because the concept of consumerism. I have to have it.
Indeed.
And that's how you're defining your extension, your ego with that. Yes, there is a cure. The cure at the same time, and I'm not dissing the entire United States of America, obviously, for it, because I think they're very generous people. And that's what happens in Pakistan as well. And the only reason our society like us
It happens
survives,
across the globe.
It does. The only reason we're surviving is because we're more givers than takers right now. And the cure really is this. We need to pause for a moment. We need to say, all right, when I have my needs and values clash, which value is it clashing with? Then I say, all right, if it's talking about, say, for example, honesty, I can either be dishonest, and I'm talking from personal experience, where I wanted to get an advertisement, but I somehow cut my hair after my approval, and I was like, all right,
Why did you?
I don't know. That's me. I wear sneakers to interviews.
There is a fine on me cutting my hair, by the way.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
We'll come to that. So I had an option there, a moral dilemma. So I had an option. Either I called the people that, okay, I've cut my hair, I was approved with that, but I'm this look now. Or I just say, hush, be dishonest essentially and get in there. Because and believe you me, as an actor, getting a TV commercial of that scale, which I did, was huge. So I did not want to do that.
What did you do?
Well, eventually,
me.
I debated. I debated within myself, what do I do? What are the easy ways out? And I will not lie, it was very tempting for me to say, let's say hush. Let's go there.
There's always a tug of war there.
It is. But then I thought, you know what, let's be honest. And again, you see, for me, in the reflection of the entire thing, is do I see value in that value for myself? If I'm going to be honest now, I also therefore need to know what honesty is. It's not about just being truthful. It's about being truthful even though it's going to cause me loss. In that state, being truthful is a higher order, so it becomes honesty. So I did. I told them.
And it's counter-materialistic.
It is. I think all values are counter greed and counter fear. Essentially, they are more generous, they're more selfless, and they are more courageous. And the values make you courageous.
But I'm inclined to know what actually happened when you told them.
I did tell
you
them.
still get?
I did tell them, and I was about to conduct a class, so I sent a message, I sent a picture. I said, this is my current look, so if you can make an arrangement for it, let me know. If you want to have an alternative, you have time. And I'll be very honest, I was a little upset
with yourself.
myself that I did that, but I thought, let's just go on. I was fortunate enough that they said, no, we're going ahead with you, this is absolutely fine.
That's fantastic.
But I'll tell you what the cherry on the top was. And this, for me, is validation of why values work. I went there and I met Waqas, who is this wonderful, nice, big, brown makeup artist who really looks down upon even the big stars at times and tells them off. He measured me up and down. He said, Omair Rana, right? I was like, yes. He came up. I was about to shake his hand. He's like, no, you hug me. And he gave me a big hug, a nice bear hug. And he said, I've yet to meet people professional like you. Now, those words give me that joy that I live with even now when I utter them.
Well, do you agree with him?
Yeah, I
Any
do.
personal experiences where there has been a tug of war, and there always is in life, and you're trying to grapple the situation between whether you do this or that, and we're often stuck there. But here the thing is, what Omair said was, let's debate with myself, so let's pause. People don't pause.
Exactly. What is interesting is to see what makes you choose the virtue or the higher value as compared to, just getting by in the world and, making shortcuts or to gain or short-term profit. So I think...
But we're always looking for shortcuts, aren't we?
Yeah, but why? I mean, because we have lost the idea of seeing value in things that are everlasting, that, we might not get short term, but at the end of the road, if I go all the way and reach there, then I will gain the benefit of
But
my
then
patience and
they
my
always say,
striving.
who's seen tomorrow?
Yeah, I know, absolutely.
What do you do with that psyche?
Where does that psyche come from? It comes from a place where we have begun to see ourselves only as physical entities, and we've forgotten that there is a spiritual part of us as well. For instance, it is said that, we are primarily spiritual beings having a physical experience. On the other hand, these days, the common idea is that we are physical bodies, perhaps, that have a spiritual experience now and again, right? So it's about perspective and how you see yourself.
Well,
And,
how do you
and
say-
you know when people say that who's seen tomorrow, are usually people who have seen lots of yesterdays. So
I know what you're saying.
You know what I'm saying? And
I
I've
know
always
what you're
wondered,
saying.
because it's all
But there's
fear-based.
so many of them who say, who's seen tomorrow?
Of course, because, and it's just, again, the perspective. It's really odd that someone who's, say, 40 plus and says, who's seen tomorrow? It's like, well, you've just seen 40 years of your life. And if you live every day of your life with who's seen tomorrow, you're just being ungrateful. Ungrateful for what you've received without even asking, So it's a very fear-based perspective. And living in that kind of a life, it's just very angst. No wonder you're getting to your depressions, your antidepressants, and you
And there's so much of that.
Oh yeah, and you have your own shrink. You have to have this and that. You try to find external ways to cure yourself. Essentially, it's just a matter of pause.
Well, on that note, we'll take a short break and we'll be right back.
Yeah, good pause.
Good point. Welcome back. We're having very interesting conversation regarding happiness and making the right choice. Now, my question to my lovely guests is, why are we so much interested in instant happiness? We don't really think of long-term happiness. So what's the problem there? We want to be happy, we want it now.
I know. I think it's a couple of things for
Omair, I
for
want to
me.
be happy and I want to be happy now.
Well, good for you. Best of luck, mate.
But that's a reality check.
It is, but we'll have to understand why that is. First of all, I think everyone has the right to be happy, and we should all
Absolutely.
work towards that, right? And I think when I say we all should all work towards that, essentially is we should help other people be happy.
Sure.
And it sort of helps. However,
I'm game in as far as I get all I want.
well, you will receive it. That's what my point is. There's a difference between getting things and receiving things.
Okay,
That's what it is. And why I'm playing on those words.
Yeah, you're being a semantic specialist.
No,
now.
I'm being
Come
absolute
on.
because I'm reflecting the thematic that we've actually developed in research. It's the difference of intent, pure and simple. If your intent really is to get from someone else, it's a totally different ballgame. However, without asking when you receive things, and that's where true joy. Now that brings me to the other aspect, and this is where my economics kicks in as well. So I remember when we used to study utility and how you used to work with that, we always figured out there was a diminishing marginal utility. So I'll be very happy with my
remember that.
first. You do, right? Yeah. So we'd be very happy with our first apple. The second, maybe even more, but the third, a little less, and the fourth, maybe much less, and the fifth, we're puking.
Exactly.
So when
We're
we
done with
seek joy or happiness from something external, it has a diminishing curve. However, how many times, and this is for everyone who's listening to us, you, me, everyone, when we've done something good, genuinely, unconditionally nice, we still remember it and still gives us the same joy, if not more. Now that's the difference between pleasure and joy. A pleasure may be drawn from something external, But joy is all inside, and that's the true happiness we seek. What that requires is, first of all, the distinction, and second of all, time. I mean, why are we being so restless and with time?
Have we experienced that? How do we figure out the distinction between pleasure and joy?
Exactly. He just pointed it out. He said, joy is something that comes from within, while pleasure is attached to objects outside of us.
Right, but
so it has to do with the inner dimension.
The thing is this, that...
Now, for example, it's the month of Ramadan. So lots of people are going to be helping a lot of other people out. And of course, we've all done this in life. The moment I say, remember the time you really helped someone out and we don't know about him or her, and all of a sudden, yes, you recall, that's the joy. The joy that was all within the self. However, when say, remember that great iftar you had? Oh yeah, that was brilliant, right? The great steak I had, oh wonderful. But, you know, how many steaks are you going to have? And you'll just have it once, or you recall it, which is pretty good. Do you know what you'll recall with joy? The experience. The people who were there with you, or who made that for you, or you made it for someone. That you will always remember, no matter how tasty the steak was, but the experience was better.
But I want to indulge you in this. Why aren't we seeking that joy?
The reason is because what is the measure of man today? It is the size of his bank balance, the number of his possessions. You know, you look at that and you say, oh, what a great man, what a successful man.
Reality
you don't
check,
look
that's
at the
true.
state of his happiness or the state of his mind to judge, you know, the quality of his being. So that is the reason. Again, that is something that has been bequeathed to us from materialism, you know.
So what do we do?
Materialistic consciousness.
I mean, in the conversation we're having, I never had in school. Did you have something like this in school?
Not explicitly.
But then where do we learn this? Where do we learn the distinction? Because what happens during break time or lunchtime, it's like, oh, I got myself new Nikes.
Yeah, true.
And hey, my dad got the new car. And that becomes a problem.
I'll tell you, I'll be very honest, I'll be a little generational right now, but I'm pre-millennial. So it was a difference. And there are things that I witnessed.
Because you were playing Pac-Man?
Yeah, exactly, with the Atari, right? Yeah, with the little box going around.
Exactly.
And I'm a digital immigrant, right? So the others were digital natives that came about. But and as a teacher, I saw that as well. I saw the distinction. I felt it was so rapid that we still absorbed it from certain mentors, certain parents, certain adults.
True.
And we sort of adapted to those values without realizing them. When I got into teaching, you know, the first job I had as a teacher was a character building teacher. And I laughed.
That's a good job.
But I laughed. I thought, you know, I did not consider myself up to that mark, because the barometer, the measure that we have of our ustads, our mentors, was much higher than who we are. And I realized, has the bar been set so low that
There's nobody out there who's willing to do it, actually, and there is no money in it.
Agreed. So it has to be one of those, and mind you, I'm not dissing the entire teaching industry. I've met so many teachers who do it only because of the output, not the income. So they've been brilliant. But having said that, yes, we needed to be a little more explicit with the millennials, and now the Generation Alpha, which is coming.
But again, today, you know, education has become more result-oriented.
Yeah.
So it's all about producing a good result so you can get into a good university, and
then get a good
get out
job.
of the university, get a good
and get a good spouse.
high-paying job, and so on. So it is all materially driven again, right? And we don't see any virtue in character building and teaching ethics and things like that. Whereas I think it is very important to understand that a true education involves a cultivation of personality.
Where would that happen?
It's not just about giving information or, you know, enabling a child to end up with a good job. Yeah. It's all about personality development as well.
I want to
becoming
ask you,
a good human being.
If I may, where would that character building happen?
I think we need to rethink our whole education system. We need to change the paradigm that we have set for ourselves in education and you know, social life and all of that, because all this has a bearing upon the cultivation of character.
I would agree with that and extend it further. It takes a village to raise a child. We've got too many village clowns now. That's the problem.
Indeed.
But the question is, to answer your question.
But isn't the media the village clown now?
Well, that's a circus. So, but for example,
and a big one.
Yeah, but let's say we're in a state of media right now. We're using media as a platform and talking about these things.
Right.
It's a tool. How are you going to use it?
True.
So each and every one of us, literally to the extent of our nose, that's our responsibility. For example, today when I went to pick up my daughter, there's this driver who would come to pick up another child. And when the little girl came to the gate, he said, go. He was a little cross. He said, where's your card? Like, wo vandar hai. It's like, go get it. And I turned to him, I was like, be a little affectionate.
Yeah.
Be a little affectionate.
Be compassionate.
That's it. So that's the extent that I could do it at that particular moment. Whether he does it or not is not in my control.
But let me stop you here. Don't you see people dissing each other in the media so much? There are influencers who are ditching, anchors, politicians. Everyone is dissing, degrading the other.
Yeah.
So what are we learning? Well, what's the takeaway?
I agree. I mean, media, theater, television, films, these are hugely influential tools. I do not think that we've done it responsibly. I think, again, to echo the materialism, it's more about where do I make my money? And whatever sells is going to work. I usually use the word because being an economics and management student, I usually help educate people differentiate the two words. There's a difference between quality and grade. Fast food is good quality because it's neat, clean, processed, exactly what you want.
Exactly.
Because the quality
and it's
is,
quick.
yeah, and quality is defined by the customer.
Exactly.
So if the customer wants this, that's quality. But it's low grade. Cigarettes are high quality, low grade products.
Absolutely.
In entertainment, in television, in news, etc., we have a high moral ethical responsibility. I do not think that we've done very well, primarily again because of greed. And there are very few who have actually stood up and said something about it. But when they do, we need to highlight the good. For example, very recently someone called a guest on stage on part of their interview and dissed him. Now, very recently after that, he's gone on television and apologized. I would like to
because
highlight
there was
that.
so much awareness.
Which is great.
Which is fantastic.
Which is fantastic.
Which is a step
we
in the
need
right
to
direction.
actually herald the person. Because I've personally tweeted on that account, I said, it takes character to identify a mistake, admit it, and then do something about it.
Exactly.
So yeah,
and then you should forget about it as well.
Of course. And then move on. That's a great learning opportunity
Absolutely.
for all of us.
You've been a Sufi practitioner and a teacher. I'm sure you've grappled with some of these issues across the board. People coming to you with problems that they've been looking for instant happiness and they have not found it.
True.
What do you say to them?
And it's all about, I think, reorientation of one's focus in life. What are we focusing on? What are we looking for in life? And again, if our quest is only for comfort in material life, we're going to come upon disappointment after disappointment because...
And I think that is a problem.
Yeah, because another name for life in the world is change.
True.
Nothing remains the same. And if you're looking for stability, you will not find it in the life of the world.
But is it that not until you've been disappointed or heartbroken, as you hear, or as you read in Sufi poetry, that you don't trot that path or don't start seeking?
That's right.
So you have to be heartbroken first.
The shell of the heart has to be broken in order to reveal the pearl of true knowledge within. Right?
But then there is so much struggle the person goes through. I mean, I see it across the board. I mean, you and I, we both taught. And we've both seen people struggling. And even if you're trying to impart that knowledge, it's then again that shell which becomes a problem. It doesn't seep in. What can you, and your first job was a character building one. And while you were averse to that, perhaps then, you've now pretty much accepted that role.
Yeah.
And you've embraced it.
Yeah, I
But
think,
what do you tell them now?
Well, I mean, for me, it's I've been very fortunate because, and I'm a
For not leaving a university in Lahore where you've not taught.
well, but actually, on the contrary, to be able to find opportunities to learn. I've been very fortunate on that. And I believe that if you seek the answer, it seeks you back. And when it did seek me
There's
the right
some who
path.
don't seek.
Well,
And they continue struggling, and the struggle continues
now here's
ad
my opinion.
infinitum.
Here's my opinion. I think struggle is constant. But what are you struggling with and what are you struggling for defines things. So if you're going to be, and taking that idea, if you're going to be struggling for the worldly things, it's a very uncomfortable struggle. I've been there, we've all been there, and it's not very assuring. But if you go beyond that, it's like looking at the bigger picture, and you realize, all right, hold on, pause. I need to struggle
another
for self.
pause. This is the second pause now.
But you know, struggle in the world.
But then it's important, right? I'm just picking on you, but it's important to do that. And the problem is, people, this is the point I want to get to, that people don't pause. People are so busy WhatsApping, Facebooking, Instagramming, that there is no time for pausing there.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think, you know, the three of us, we're still fortunate enough to be, as I said, digital immigrants. So we know what it's like to live without a mobile phone, for example.
Really?
Oh, yes. and when the current or other people, or even us, for example, for that matter, if we turn our mobile phones off, we realize the value of time.
We still call each other.
Well,
that doesn't happen. People leave each other voice notes.
That's true, exactly.
They want to do everything in their power to avoid another human being.
Yeah, but you see, that's what happens. The moment you lose those distractions, they're really distractions. That's what they are. And the moment you try to break off with it, it's like an addiction, any addiction. And you break off from it, you realize, all right, there are alternative things as well. You learn to see things, the same thing, from different perspectives.
Yeah.
And makes you more empathic, makes you more tolerant, makes you calmer somehow.
And sometimes go cold turkey as well.
Let's
accept that.
Which is fine. I don't mind cold turkey if it's in a sandwich. So.
There must be a lot of people coming to you who are struggling to attain peace, but they're trying to get what they want and they're unable to get it and they're struggling. How do you deal with that? I mean, there's so many of them that absolutely there is no way that you wouldn't have come across something like that.
It's not something that they can learn overnight or change, but it's a gradual process, and it's all about shifting perspective. It's looking at yourself and things from a higher vantage point than from the everyday subjective point of view.
But a quick question there. How do you change your perspective?
I mean, I'll use your buzzword, pause.
On that note, we'll take a pause and we'll be back after the break. Welcome back. Omair, I want to ask you a question.
Yeah.
Ever made a wrong choice in life?
Oh yeah, plenty. Many times.
I've made more mistakes in life. How can you say that?
Oh, you do? This is a brilliant thing. Just today, my wife was talking about something that she's working on, and she said, you know, all this effort and I might fail. And I scoffed. And she turned around and she says, you know, sometimes I look at you and I do admire you. I was like, what do you mean? You have failed so many times in life and you still carry on. I was like, well, what other choice do we have? And that's what it is, you know.
But failing is one thing. Making an unethical choice and accepting and learning from it is another.
Oh yeah, I think those are the best and the worst failures at the same time. Provided
most fruitful failures.
True, because you know, quoting someone, I think when I said, you make those mistakes, they cease to be mistakes when you turn back, learn from them, and move on. They just become learning opportunities.
What do you say? We all make mistakes, but we kind of not accept our mistakes. What's going on there? From a spiritual point of view, how would you explain that?
When we do not accept a mistake, then what happens is that we create a shadow self. So all those mistakes are kind of swept under the rug. They don't disappear, they're still there, and they create what Carl Jung called the shadow self, right? And we are afraid of confronting the shadow self. But in spiritual work, inner work, this is of utmost importance. We have to take on the shadow self. We have to confront that part of us that we do not like to see.
Very interesting.
What happens is when earlier on you spoke of people, you know, trying to look good by showing others in a bad light. And that is exactly what happens here. You are projecting your own shadow self onto the other because you don't want to see those vices in yourself, so you're quick to point them out in the other person.
When do we realize that we are doing something wrong? I mean, there's a notion.
Instantly, I think. We have this inner sense. The conscience pricks us, and we know when we do something wrong, we have an internal compass which tells us immediately, I've done something wrong. But then, we are also quick to kind of suppress that instinct that is telling us we are on the wrong side. And after a while, we forget.
Yeah. I agree with that. Yeah.
This happens at the workplace. That happens in every facet of life. Yeah. In order to be one up, we play these tricks with other people. And in college, I heard the word bloodbath. I was like, what? This really mars the college experience. This is while I was in college in the United States, going to an Ivy League university. It was a bloodbath because everybody wanted to get that GPA, be on the dean's list, and so on and so forth. But it marginalizes the college experience.
Well, I think
it marginalizes life.
Well, yes, I think the experience generally is something I would not encourage or agree with. But at the same time, if you realize it's socialization, isn't it? So it's telling you this is what the world's currently, as you were earlier saying, is about. What I do generally believe, even in competition, I believe there should be an element of collaboration within it. I've been part of debating circuit as well for a very long time, and I wrote, I think, probably 2 blogs in my life, and one of them happened to be about.
And you did that to cover everything in the world.
Yeah, well, I need to write
because you've practically done everything.
Nah, not yet. But in that, I remember I wrote one for debates, because debating circuit can be a bloodbath. It can be one of those most
like any competition.
It's brutal, and it's more painful for me because. It's supposed to be intellectually superior.
Yeah.
And therefore it should be ethically superior as well.
Yeah.
However, it's not.
And stimulating.
Yeah. And I remember writing that if you shift your intent, the same thing changes. And if your intent essentially is that I'm not trying to get something, I don't need to win by pushing you down. That's the idea. And we take the winning aspect out of it for a moment. We'd say, all right, let's take up a debate, and we say we're going to have the same structure. We debate again, but our objective has changed. The objective is now that there's a house in front of us, there's an audience in front of us, and they have to make a decision on this subject we're debating. So my contribution is to be the best possible contribution for that decision, and the opposition is obviously doing the opposite. And yet there's going to be a trophy, but the trophy is not going to be on the winner, but essentially who made the best contribution to make the decision.
So but people don't realize that.
I think it's the same thing that we can encourage and carry on. However, there's so many sports that essentially do. Sports essentially will be where it's highly competitive, so to speak. But at the end of the day, if you look at it, at the bigger picture, they're collaborating. They're pushing each other to be better.
But Omair, please accept, I'm the winner here today.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and that has been my contribution.
What's your point of view over here? We are constantly dissing the other person. It happens in the work life. People are getting more and more stressed. There is a problem there. How to deal with it?
Just the other day, I came across this interesting acronym, TEAM, team. Together, everyone achieves more.
Which
so
exactly what you said as well earlier.
That the other person's success is also my success at the end of the day. If we start
but you
thinking
need to elevate to a certain
rather
level.
Than just...
You need to elevate to a certain level.
I don't think so. I personally don't think so. I think...
We've just forgotten to be happy for the other person.
Yeah, but I mean, if you talk about team, I mean, I was just watching the football matches, the UEFA Champions and whatnot. Look at that. You will voluntarily give up the opportunity to score a goal and pass it to someone else. And so it means it is abundant amongst us. We just need to identify it. That's it, and call it what it is. Nothing else.
True.
There are people who are unable to deal with that. It's like they have to be the best, otherwise they get really angry. And I think you've mentioned anger and you've mentioned fear as well. What do you tell those people? That it's all right, there's going to be another time.
True.
But if they don't understand, what would you recommend to them?
If I speak personally and,
in your teachings, what do you do?
In my teachings, for instance. So I always tell my students that it's not just about getting to a certain point. It's not about reaching a goal or a destination. It's all about the journey. The journey is the destination.
Indeed,
yeah.
that's
So,
wonderfully put.
that is a clue that I could give.
Yeah.
How many people understand that it's a journey?
I
I
think
think it was fairly, in my life, it was fairly late. And by virtue of having good teachers, good mentors, that I understood that it's the journey that matters.
it just needs to be, you just need to lift the cloche and serve the dish. Everyone has experienced it. All of us have experienced somewhere that we've never got what we wanted to get, but we had a lot of experience and we enjoyed it, and we translate that as the journey. All of us have done that.
And we're all the more richer for that experience.
Absolutely.
What
Absolutely.
we are today,
And there are many of
we
us
are
who
because
have
of
achieved
the
what they
journey that
wanted to
we've
achieve,
made.
but then once they achieved it, they're like,
Yeah,
now what?
true.
I remember this one colleague of mine, young man, and he spent God knows how many years of his life just to get a prosmetic, a Honda Prosmetic Civic. And it became his cause in life. And when he got it, and he's gone through hell and high water, when he got it, he drove over to my place and he said, Omair, I got it. So I was like, good for you.
Mm.
And he's like, I don't know what to do next. And as a drama teacher,
And that's sad.
yeah, it is sad. I felt superbly sad. So eventually he went to England and studied more and came back and whatnot. So he satiated his life somehow. But I remember as a drama teacher, I always to remind people that we define character as someone who has a want. And our wants define who we are. If you have no want, well, you have no character.
But then there is another question of being brainwashed. We've been told what we want. And I think that plays a very important, and that's where media comes in as well.
Absolutely.
It's constantly going on. There is a voice
Absolutely.
that's always there with us in the room that's telling us what we need.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
it's constant out there.
Yeah.
Even if we are not focusing, we actually are. So what do we deal with that? How? I mean, again, it comes down
I'll tell you how you deal with it.
Yeah.
You have to build a counter narrative. Essentially, that's what it is. You build the same counter narrative for it, and I'll tell you what people need, which is a fact. They need what we talked about, happiness and joy. And how do they get that? Is by understanding what they genuinely do need and what is being told to them that they need.
But going back in time, when were you able to actually build a counter narrative?
I think. I personally think the entire life, and it's just that at certain moments, like-minded people have said, "Dude, you're doing something right. That's the right thing." And it's still a struggle. I think we're still not right all the time. Of course not. I don't have a halo over my. Do I have a halo over my head yet?
Yeah, it's,
all right. It must be the light.
It is silver in color.
But we're not. We're humans. To err is to be human, right? So it's a constant struggle. We will make
an
those
ongoing
mistakes.
process.
We're certainly
Quite
going
right.
to keep doing that.
When does the process actually start is the question. Is there anything that we can do to start the process?
I think when we are jolted out of our complacency in life, and that comes from, unfortunately, through bitter experiences in life.
Exactly, and
mostly.
one too many.
Seldom through joy.
So the first time you are denied the cookie jar,
Exactly.
the process has begun.
It's after rejections or failures after failures. But there is a lot of this that people lose jobs, people are unhappy, people go in and out of relationships. Relationships have become disposable as well because they're looking for instant happiness, but they don't find that. Have you experienced anything like that with people you've dealt with? That there are a lot of people who are coming in and saying, oh, we came in and out of relationship, or we quit this job because we weren't happy. What do you say to them?
They also, they come to a spiritual teacher, they're also seeking instant remedies for themselves, right? And solutions. And when they don't find them, they get disappointed and they leave.
Ironic.
So there are those kinds of seekers as well, who are looking for, instant
That is
fixes.
so ironic.
Yeah.
And that's extremely ironic. I'm here to fix my problem of seeking instant remedy. And for that, I need instant remedy.
Yeah.
I think that's so ironic.
Any piece of advice on how to deal with disappointments? And
Well, I think the first thing is to embrace it. We have been training a generation, perhaps, to to not fail rather than teach them how to deal with failure. And the fact is, there will be more failures than successes, and we need to learn how to simply embrace them. That's it. Pure and simple. You will fail. You will have to reflect what the process was and what you did wrong in the process or what you could have done different in the process. Turn back, learn from it, and move on. But it has to be a constant thing, right? Go ahead and do it.
I want to ask you, any piece of advice for people who are struggling with this tug of war within to choose between the right and wrong? What would you say to them?
I would say that go for something that gives you a comfortable sleep at night, you know. So choose...
That's most important.
Choose that path which is going to let you sleep comfortably at the end of the day. I mean, that is an easy answer to your question.
That's fantastic.
The most direct and simple answer that I could think of.
That's fantastic. Today, we have only taken a step forward in pursuit to promote spiritual growth. Think about it and make wisdom viral. Bless you.